Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
But much of what the White House said initially about the deal for Sergeant Bergdahl is now in question. First, there's Bergdahl himself. On Sunday, the administration portrayed him as something of a hero.
He served the United States with honor and distinction.
But today, the news is the Army is preparing to... How about the 5 Taliban released in the deal? Just yesterday?
The transfer of these detainees did not pose a significant threat to the United States.
But today?
Is there the possibility of some of them trying to return to activities that are detrimental to us? Absolutely.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Joining us now is reporter and national security team leader at the Washington Times, Guy Taylor. Hey, Guy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. You know, we have news that broke a little earlier, basically confirming from a classified military report, AP, New York Times, that says that the Sergeant Bergdahl in June of '09 had wandered away from assigned areas before, both at the training range in California and at his remote outpost in Afghanistan, then returned. So it's a 35-page report, so it appears that there might have been 2 other times prior to the final time where he wound up with the Taliban.
Totally interesting twist in this story. I think, you know, one of the more eye-opening aspects of this whole thing, and this is one of the pieces we actually broke 2 days ago here at the Washington Times, is the way that U.S. military insiders, particularly in the Special Forces community, concluded very early on in this case that Bo Bergdahl had deserted his post in Afghanistan. And then actually the way that the Special Forces commanders on the ground in Afghanistan weighed that factor when deciding whether to push forward with missions to potentially rescue him.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that. That was a groundbreaking exclusive that you guys at the Washington Times had, and we just had on prior to you Major Rusty Bradley, who was there at the command center in southern Afghanistan while he went missing. And he says, you know, no doubt in his mind that he deserted. And you know, so it's interesting. Talk about, you know, there's the official administration line is the Taliban kept moving him around. You know, they didn't know where he was, so they couldn't risk sending in special ops and having a disaster occur.
I think there's some truth according to my own sources, and it sounds like you guys are interviewing some fairly high-level characters who are former officials as well, but it's that, in fact, he was being moved around a little bit. But that on the ground, I mean, first of all, you got to realize special ops and special forces operations are extremely classified. This isn't like Beltway intel circles here in Washington. Guys in Afghanistan and previously in Iraq, in these wars, when they get an op, it is very secret and they don't talk about it, period. So what my sources are telling me, and they were sources on the Hill and from here in the intelligence community in Washington, is that, in fact, that are familiar with guys in that inner circle and speak to them regularly, is that in fact special forces on the ground had drummed up a couple of rescue plans for Bergdahl and actually had ground level intel on 2 occasions as to where he was being held by the Haqqani network, all the way down to the level of the number of Haqqani gunmen who were guarding him, and could have pulled the trigger on a clandestine op to try and get him back, but didn't because of his status. His classified status within a year of disappearing was that of being an American citizen who'd gone missing in Afghanistan, not a U.S. soldier who was being held as a POW.
And why was that?
Because it was concluded very early on in a 2010-2011 probe inside the Pentagon that he was a deserter, and there were uncertainties associated with it. But once Special Forces had that information, they knew.
So once I'm sorry to interrupt. So is it?
Well, here, I think I can explain it for you.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, is it protocol that once someone, if it's believed someone deserts and they're pretty sure, and you know there's no real debate that person is not a POW?
No, this is why my story was No, it's okay. This is why my story was a little bit interesting and very kind of insidey, is that there isn't a protocol for that, and we're not going to find it written down somewhere. We're talking about insider military culture at this point. The way I try to explain it, and we get into this a little bit in the story, is if you imagine a U.S. citizen who's in his 20s and he's a really adventurous backpacker who goes missing, say, in the mountains of Afghanistan, are U.S. Special Forces going to launch a high-risk, combat-likely clandestine raid to get that individual back, even if they believe they're being held by the so-called enemy in the Taliban? And the answer you're going to find unequivocally is no, they're not. In fact, there are multiple cases in recent years, including 2 in southern Iran, where we haven't done that. So that's what I'm talking about. As far as an official protocol, no, we're not going to find that. This is internal stuff. This is an unusual case as well. That's one thing I think that as bad a job as the administration has done with the narrative on this whole thing, and we could get into that, and as bad a job as the media has done of hyping certain aspects of it, I think that what we have to come down to and we have to agree on is that this is a pretty unusual case. There weren't several cases like this. There's not a protocol for how to handle it. This is a 14 years into a messy, complicated war. We've got an administration that, for its own reasons, and I'm not here to judge them on the straight news side, wants to get out of this war, was pressured by its own constituency to end the war, and also pressured to close Guantanamo Bay. All of those factors are on the table in this, and they've all kind of collided in this sort of chaotic announcement that seems to have surprised a lot of people on Capitol Hill who are outraged, and also surprised the media. You know, there were investigative reports on Bo Bergdahl. Rolling Stone ran a piece about him and his family 2-3 years ago that delved into this deserter question. So people really watching it closely have known that this is a weird story from the get-go.
Absolutely. Let me shift over to the end. And when I saw the video, the Taliban video, I was kind of taken aback. I had no idea how the transfer went down. And I would have assumed that, much like we saw the Taliban prisoners who were released by us, arriving off a bus and being greeted and hugged, I would have thought that maybe Qatar or somebody would have put him on a plane or a helicopter or facilitated a transfer. Instead, we went in with SEALs, special ops. I know there were helicopters beyond our view that I'm told were ready to strike at a moment's notice. However, we went into a danger zone. There were people with our RPGs, 18 of them by some counts, that any one of them could have blasted that helicopter out of the sky. We undertook a high-risk mission to get him, did we not?
We could call it a deep op, okay? It was heavy, and he also was patted down.
Yes.
The video. There's so many things you could say about this video. I think what it brought to mind for me, and pull me back if you think I'm going off topic here, I've covered the war on terror since it started after 9/11, and a little bit in the year or two before. This is first getting into journalism. I follow this stuff closely, and I have enough sources in town in Washington to know that really the sexiest thing, and I don't mean to play on words for you here, but one of the sexiest things about all of this and heaviest things has to do with what's called penetration. How much penetration does the United States Special Forces and intelligence community have into the so-called enemy? Okay, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, the Haqqani network in this case in Afghanistan. And the answer is really limited, always really limited. Here's a guy with Bo Bergdahl that just lived with the Haqqani network for the last 5 years. This issue of penetration is hot. Okay, it's deep, and these guys who are special forces guys and intel guys that were on that helicopter, they were there on a very coordinated and inside and risky op to get this guy back from enemy territory. That's what that video shows. How the Taliban now uses that video has been pretty interesting. They very clearly jumped on it. It went totally viral yesterday. The original video that got sent out to news organizations was actually 17 minutes long. The second half of it juxtaposed images of the freed former Taliban commanders from Afghanistan. It's totally a propaganda video. I had intelligence sources yesterday tell me that the CIA is like very closely watching this how quickly this thing has spread, because they're trying to gauge how it affects public opinion of the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Right. Well, you know, Lindsey Graham told me yesterday that the Taliban had a great day and a great week, and they'd be dancing in the street, except the Taliban don't believe in dancing, which I thought was a pretty good line.
That's right. Well, yeah, I think they are. In fact, I mean, Mullah Omar, who's, kind of the de facto leader of the Taliban, rarely puts out his own statements. And within 24 hours of this deal making headlines last Sunday,
there it was.
He had a statement circulating saying this was a great victory for the Taliban. And now this video just kind of follows it up. And these are all things. I mean, one of the things I've tried to look at in this is, yesterday, the Obama administration started to kind of rally the wagons a bit and put together a narrative that said, there was testimony on Capitol Hill from James Clapper and others about this, and we have communicated with Congress.
Yeah, 3 years ago we communicated with Congress.
3 years ago. One of the things, though, that
we got 30 seconds, guy. Yeah.
Look, the idea here is that if Clapper's office was consulted on the decision to release these guys, then there would be a document that looked at what the implications would be of releasing these guys. My question is, did that assessment take into account the likelihood?
Well, you'll get to the bottom of it. Guy Taylor, Washington Times. Got to go. Thanks for coming on, sir.